Hey listeners, Doug Brunner here. Real quick, before we start the show, I wanted to give a shout out to our amazing sponsors who brought this show to you here today. Have you heard of Central Irrigation? Central Irrigation specializes in irrigation system design, installation, and maintenance from a variety of agriculture fields. They are committed to service any farmer's needs, making their services unlimited and diverse. Check them out at centralirrigation.com or call them at 209-262-3723.
The amount of time and effort you spend to track your financial accounts. And think about that for a moment, and then how much time is being spent tracking water use, and the fact that water use, there is no substitute, no alternative. You can go to a different seed manufacturer, you can go to a different plant equipment manufacturer, you get an alternative input for your farming operation for any of the other inputs except one. And what is that? Water.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of The Toast. I am Doug Brunner here again with Keith Yamamoto, and we're lucky today to be interviewing Kevin France with Swim, Brad Samuelson, and Chase Hurley from Water, Land, and Solutions. I'm going to have Keith kind of set the stage and let people know who they are.
Yeah, so Keith Yamamoto here, and we're here with Kevin France. He's the CEO of Swim Systems. Kevin is the leader in water accounting and the future of water accounting. And their company is based out of Colorado, but they reach multiple countries, and we're working closely with them here in California. Then we have Brad Samuelson, who's the managing member of Water and Land Solutions, and he's your local groundwater and Merced area water expert. And Chase Hurley, also a managing member of Water and Land Solutions. Chase has an extensive background working in management within water districts, and I don't know if I know a guy that knows more about the California waterway system that doesn't know more than Chase Hurley. Sorry. So anyway, those are the guys here at the table, and we're looking forward to learning something from them today.
Thank you guys for showing too.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
A couple of highlights. We want to thank you, all our listeners that listened last time to our first episode with my grandpa and Uncle Sight Vanderdusen and Ed Yeager. It was such a great time interviewing some patriarchs of the industry, especially the dairy industry. We had a great time. A lot of good feedback from listeners. Surprised. We actually had over 750 listeners, so I think that's quite a good stage. So we're excited to bring more people who are, well educated in the ag deal, especially California. The three guys sitting at the table are essential to everything we do because it all begins with water, right? And so I feel fortunate to have you guys here. I've gotten to know these guys over the last year. I think people are going to be lucky to listen to them as well as learn from them because water is our life, especially in California. Everybody knows it, that we are dealing with major issues. So let's, Keith, maybe get these guys going here. And you've been working alongside them in a couple of different things already. So let's see.
Yeah, I just, an intro on the companies. We introduced the guys individually, but a Swim is, like I said, the leader in water accounting and really the major player in that space. And Water and Land Solutions, what these guys are great at is really solving problems and preparing people for the imminent regulation that's coming down the pipeline for all the farmers, specifically here in California. And hopefully these guys at some point can help people across state lines as well. It's something that might not be completely understood by a lot of the farmers and people within the ag industry yet. But soon enough, it'll be something that if you don't understand, you'll be at a huge disadvantage and have a really hard time competing in the ag space if you're not prepared and being proactive.
So I just started working alongside Kevin in the last couple of months, but Chase and Brad, I've known you guys for about I've known Brad since I was about 12 years old. But on that note, Chase and Brad came together about a year ago from all my understanding here. And let's talk about why you guys came together, started Waterland and Solutions, and what you guys are seeing going on currently in your business.
Well, the main reason that we started Water and Land Solutions because we both wanted to work more at the farmer level in helping solve problems, and with the imminent implications of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, commonly referred to as SGMA, saw great need for individual farmers to become proactive in their water management. And I was thinking about starting my own business, and at the same time, Chase was also, Chase and I knew each other, but we didn't have a long history together, but he was going through a similar change in his work life, and we talked about doing this together, and here we are. It's actually been almost 2 years now.
Yeah, and it's been a great partnership. I started out as a farmer. My parents were farmers. The last 23 years, I've been on the water resource side, working for 2 different districts in Merced County. It was a great experience. Got to manage a lot of great people. Got to work for a lot of great landowners and farmers. But it was time in my career to make a change. I want to get back on the private side, and they sort of fell in line. I got to know Brad. We were sort of doing the same type of work from a different perspective. So we sort of put our wits together, and there's a lot of great things on the horizon. And in my mind, it's because we're working with farmers, and that's all I've ever known. So we're going to plug away, and it's been a great sort of 16 months to start with, a lot of good things in the future.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything in particular, that you guys have been swamp busy? I know I see you guys on a daily basis, and you guys seem to always be working on something. Is there anything in particular that's driving, the demand for your guys' services and driving the need for someone like yourselves to be consulting the growers?
The major need that we see is the conveyance of surface water to farm ground. Basically, there's a new rush for that. So we see lots of, not just white areas, but mostly white area farmers. White areas are areas that aren't within water districts, trying to access surface water from either a neighboring water district that does have supply, or flood water or other kind of water from natural water bodies.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is farmers are great people, but at times they struggle working with their neighbors. And even though they're all farmers, they're all businessmen, and sort of a go-between is helpful sometimes. So we're creating a lot of unique partnerships where we're able to get 5, 10, 15 growers on different projects to all work together because they don't have any sort of built-in infrastructure like a water district or an irrigation company as the conduit. So me and Brad are able to step in, fill the void, and represent them in a lot of different venues.
And what obviously this is all being driven by regulation. What are those initial signals from the regulators that's driving this new planning that hasn't been there in the past with the on-farm water situations?
Well, one of the obvious one is California's Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which a lot of people, the nomenclature is SGMA. So that's been a big driver for the last couple of years as it's come into place. But I think, and Brad has got a lot of background in that. He's sort of focused on it a little more so than I am on the day-to-day. But the other thing is you've got the federal CVP project, the Central Valley Project, and you've got the State Water Project that have had a lot of issues in the last 10 or 15 years come before them, both from an environmental perspective, from a policy perspective, where the projects either don't work like they used to 5, 10, 15 years ago for a variety of reasons, or they just, the state has outgrown themselves and outgrew those 2 projects. So we as a state and farmers, we have to be more proactive. We need to get more projects built. From my perspective, if you wait for the federal or state government to get it done, a lot of these growers are going to be out of business. So let's try to figure out how to put new partnerships in place work with the state and federal projects and the state and federal governments, but we're not going to do it unless the farmers are organized and can get on the same page.
I think that's a good time to segue and kind of bring Kevin's perspective on this situation. So you guys, Brad and Chase, working on infrastructure projects, contracts to bring surface water to white areas, which white areas are ranches that have groundwater only. So Kevin, these guys are finding a way to get this supply to these ranches, and you're on the accounting side. So how do you see?
Before you say something, go on to Kevin. I want to say something because I look at it a little different than these three guys here, and yourself is. I'm in the office daily, right? I look at balance sheets, P&Ls, which is the income statement, right? And I look at how much money am I spending daily, right? And so now my focus is, as a farmer and I do a lot of acquisitions, buying ground, leasing ground, is how do I get cheaper water? That being said, I see a lot of guys putting in, through the work of Brad and Chase, that they've assembled some massive infrastructure pipelines to these wide areas. My question to all those people, and where I see the value of swim, and I'm going to segue and finish your line. I'm sorry, I interrupt people a lot, Keith.
It's all right, Doug.
You're pretty used to that.
Right now.
Okay.
It's just part of the culture around here.
Yeah, get used to it. Yeah, you're all going to get interrupted. But I really look at the financials, right, constantly. I track them. I mean, it's a daily deal for me. And these people are putting in hundreds of thousands to $1 million of pipelines, as well as pumping stations, diversions, as well as the legal side they're spending money on. I really hope they're spending as much time tracking that.
They aren't. And you hit it, the nail on the head, Doug.
Yeah.
The amount of time and effort you spend to track your financial accounts. And think about that for a moment, and then how much time is being spent tracking water use, and the fact that water use, there is no substitute, no alternative. You can go to a different seed manufacturer, you can go to a different plant equipment manufacturer. You get an alternative input for your farming operation for any of the other inputs except one. And what is that? Water.
Good point.
If you have a surface water supply, if you're lucky enough to have surface and groundwater, which some do, some don't, there's not an alternative to that. If you can't get it from your primary source, whether it's from the surface, obviously groundwater, or from your district, you're hooped. So managing that resource, there's a direct corollary to how much water you have versus how much you can grow. So it's flabbergasting to me. And what we've seen in the last 5 years, finally people are starting to put that together. Even 5 years ago, we started SWIM almost 10 years ago as a research project with the USDA. Colorado State, Utah State, and guys from Fresno State all came together, PhDs, put this program together. Even back then, those researchers were saying, why in the hell are you even doing this? That was scary. Even back then. That's pushing 10 years ago. So now we fast forward. Now we're sitting here where we're sitting, western states, Colorado River allocation that services upper and lower basin states, 40% over-allocated. I mean, there's over 40% more people pulling from that river than we have water to service. Groundwater in Colorado and California, throughout the western U.S., overdrawn in most cases. And so now we're talking about a food supply problem, a water allocation problem, all rolled into one. It's scary.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is becoming more reality, and it shocks me. And even some people who are very close to me are just not, who are large farmers, big asset holders, right? Who are just, we'll deal with it when it comes, right? And the one thing I got to say about working alongside Chase and Brad is, it seems like a lot of their clients, and I know you don't want to talk about them personally, but many of them, you guys see both sides, right? You see some guys who question it. Is it useful? And then, this is a little, too much to work on right now. And then you got some guys who are totally bought in. I'm an all-in type of guy in everything I do.
Right.
And especially now towards water. I mean, every piece of property I go after, everything I do is associated more than the land is the water. And I think maybe talk about some of, highlight, not necessarily a person in particular,
client,
but how some guys have been just so aggressive towards it, yet some guys, you're almost I don't know how to say it.
Well, people just aren't interested in the service, and that's fine.
It's not about the service, though, that you're just...
They don't want to spend the time or money.
Exactly. They don't prioritize it.
They don't prioritize it.
And that shocks me, because your life and blood of that ground is water.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, let's turn into the Dust Bowl right now, or,
Well, I think there's lots of farmers who have significant surface supply, and they don't want to grow. They don't care to be more than a couple hundred acres or whatever they have, and they don't necessarily need my help, and that's okay. The type of clients that we typically have are large family farms that want to grow, or even corporate farms that obviously are always growing. So those are the most enjoyable people to work with. That if I make a suggestion on a significant infrastructure project that's out of the box, I want my clients to consider it and think about it. Things like a pilot groundwater recharge project. So you're going to spend $20,000, $30,000 on a temporary pump, some tractor work, things like that. But if it works, you're able to get flood water to that recharge pond, and now you've got an extra 500 or 600 extra acre feet of water this year, or next year, to achieve 20,000.
Oh yeah. What do you guys see as like the biggest misconception or like the bad perception as far as water goes with your clients? Like, I know there's a general perception of the water situation that we're in now, and where do you think that people are missing the point the most? And this is pretty much directed at Brad, Chase, or Kevin. You guys all deal with them on that level.
Can I throw one up?
Go for it.
My GSA is going to take care of the situation, or
explain to people what GSA is first.
Sorry about that. My sustainability agency or my district.
Yeah.
And that's not a shot against either of those entities. They have a tall order in front of them to get that management schema down pat.
Mm-hmm.
But to make an assumption that a third party, whether government, district, management, a cooperative group is going to take care of my ground, it's been in my family. Everyone that works in swim, all you guys are in ag. So that property's been in most of our clients'
family. Generations.
Assume someone else who hasn't even walked my field is going to take care of me. That is so foreign to me. I can't even put it in words. So when we hear that 7 out of 10 times, and we have to walk them off that plank and say, "Whoa, if the IRS came calling and was going to audit your taxes, would you say, oh, okay, all right, you're right?" No. If anyone else came in any capacity and questioned, especially a farming operation, which you know better than anyone, or the availability of water, you might take a second or third look at it. So when we hear that, that's something we hear a lot is, hey, someone else is going to take care of the problem. And to me, that is a recipe for disaster.
So, Kevin, I totally agree with you. I'm kind of hooked to, I keep talking about it. People are getting tired of me. Yellowstone. The show, but hey, hold on. I'm gonna say a very
actual resource.
There you go.
I watch TV shows because a lot of times I learn from smart businessmen.
Mm-hmm.
And John Dutton, Kevin Costner, he probably should call me. He probably should invest with me.
Yeah.
But you know what? In episode like 6 or 7 in season 2,
right?
His son was laying in bed, Casey, next to his wife, and he says, "My dad said someday I'm going to have to fight or kill to keep my ground."
Mm.
And he didn't understand what his dad said a long time ago. I'm hoping we don't have to kill to keep our ground. But on that note, what you just said is we're letting somebody else take care of it. Where John Dutton in the Yellowstone, he dealt with matters himself.
Right.
I can't tell you they were always legal. I like it. I like his style.
Yeah, but he dealt with it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and that's my point. And I don't want to take a shot at any of these entities because I know lots of folks that are working on these entities and they have such a tall order. Think about this. They're brought in, mandated, a few years ago to try to get the groundwater situation taken care of. California is the last state that has done anything around groundwater management. And now, the train's left the station and they're trying to fix the problem. But just when you hear that, I mean, when we hear, what's the biggest competitor to what SWIM's doing? Complacency. That is the biggest competitor. That's it. Oh,
Hey, join or die. I like that.
I have labor problems. I have this. I have that.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
They're legitimate issues.
Yeah, but nobody cares.
That's what
Without water, you have no labor.
There you go.
Without that, nobody cares. But I want to. We're talking about third parties, right? We're talking about water districts. We're talking about the state. We're talking about congressmen. All this stuff. Chase, if anybody has been associated, you have worked for water districts, right, Chase?
Yeah.
And you've left them. I can't say I think you've had great relationships with them. They still call you. You seem to be a spokesman a lot of times. But where, they have difficulties, right? They have to answer to the state. They have a lot of things. What's your advice to a farmer saying, sometimes you can't wait on them to make your to decide to protect your
right, and I think Kevin hit it on the head. Is it your whole value in your property is the water, especially in California. It's first in line, first in time. The water right is held, and vast majority of the time is through the property right. Now that water may be held in trust by a canal company. It may be held through a contractual obligation with a state or federal entity through a water district or irrigation district. But at the end of the day, when you go and buy that property, the value in that property is tied to the water right. And is the irrigation district and the water district going to fight like tooth and nail to protect that water right? And are they going to have to deal with issues such as the irrigated lands program and all the other regulatory things that are coming on upon these farmers? Absolutely, and they'll be a great conduit for them. But I'm with Kevin. How, when you take delivery of that water through that head gate, that's your water, and how you would not want to know where every single drop, how much is entering your property, how much is leaving your property, whether it's through tailwater, whether it's through a leaching factor to the substrate into your groundwater basin. The days of worried about the state or nobody's going to come in and tell me how much well water I can pump. I don't need a meter. Well, maybe so, and you can continue to fight that argument forever. But why wouldn't you want to know that information? You need to be flexible. You need to be resourceful. And at the end of the day, you've got to be documented. You've got to document what you're doing, and that's on nobody else but you. Don't rely on that from anybody else. Let the water district do what they're going to do. But why you wouldn't document every drop of water to protect yourself into the future and the asset and the whole asset of your property, which is the base of all your farming, is tied in water. I don't know why you're not moving down that road already.
I've seen a couple of headlines in the last year in this regard that the person who's going to win the Sigma lawsuits is who has the best data.
I don't know nothing about anything, but I do know one thing. What somebody just told me, maybe it was Kevin.
Oh no! Don't
actually, I've been spending so much time with attorneys. Don't state nothing unless you're ready.
Just call me an attorney.
No,
just call me an attorney.
No, definitely.
Janitor.
No, what is the most valuable? Or you said it. Data is worth more. Passed up oil, the value of data?
The value of the world's data is worth more than the value of the world's oil now. So
that sounds like something Keith said, but he's right.
Yeah,
he's right.
So,
and Kevin has. I think you have an example of what Chase is talking about. We're all talking about as far as and what Brad said about the best data wins the lawsuit.
Right.
I don't know if you can talk about it publicly, but maybe
but I'll tell you the situation.
Example,
yeah. So, I mean, SGMA's or Sustainable Groundwater Management Act is 2 new, so there's no litigation out here yet. Knock on wood. But,
there will be.
Yeah, it's forthcoming, right? You know it is. But if you look at, so we manage surface and groundwater in multiple regions, multiple districts, multiple use cases. Imperial is one of those areas. We're up in Palo Verde. So we've had we have more experience down there because that's been a bigger issue or a bigger problem to solve. But if you back up and look at kind of the district grower relationship, sometimes the growers are wondering if they're getting the amount of water that they're paying for, those sorts of things. And then, of course, the district, there's some growers that don't play by the rules, very few, most of them do. But the district's trying to manage that resource, make sure it's evenly distributed. So sometimes you have push and pull there. Our data has been used to solve litigation or legal issues outside of court around our water balance sheet data, delivering consumption data. So we've allowed growers and districts that have gotten into issues in other regions to live in peace under the assumption that they were going to continue to monitor that water and allow the district to see what's actually being delivered and the grower to see the use data, the irrigation efficiency. And we're like Switzerland in that regard. If it's good data, to the grower's benefit, we show the district. If it's crap data and the grower needs to improve the efficiency, that's the deal we make. And as long as they're willing to share it under that condition. And so to be
it's like my wife when she tells me to clean up the floor, I brush it under the rug.
Exactly like that. Exactly.
It's kind of hard to walk and get the vacuum.
Are you a farmer looking for topping services? Tree Barber focuses in mechanical topping, hedging, and custom spreading. They cater to farmers' needs throughout the Central Valley. Find them at treebarberllc.com or 559-363-3315 for more detailed information.
Kevin, it seems like your focus is the Central Valley now, right?
You got focus all over.
Yeah, you're a very focused individual. I can tell you're intense, man. I don't want to headbutt you right now, but you're pretty intense. Kevin, it seems like you've been really focused in the Central Valley lately, and why not?
Yeah.
I mean, we have the highest. We have valuable stuff. We're not growing. I guess some people are still growing corn or wheat and soybean, but we're almonds,
right.
Pistachios. Now people are looking into this hemp deal, whatever it is. Tomatoes, vegetable crop, Salinas area.
Right.
I know you've. Tell us about some of the people you're working with in the Central Valley or the Salinas area. I know you're really focused. Yeah. And just how is that relationship working? What has been the struggle in the Central Valley? What has been the struggle in the Central Valley so far?
What hasn't been the
Okay, but what's the difference between people in the Central Valley versus Imperial or Colorado or things like that? Because I do think we are... A lot of the farmers here do make a lot of money, so they think, "Hey, you know what? Right now, I'm going to hold off." But to me, it's crazy. They'll go buy a new Range Rover, which Range Rovers are nice. I don't blame them, but or buy a new house, but they're not investing. And I don't know all your costs.
Yeah, but I think Kevin also he's working with some high-end producers in Imperial. I mean, you got vegetable growers, and I think you've had some great success down there. Yep. So you might want to sort of figure out how you, based on the success you've had down there and the type of grower, how that sort of feathers up to in our area.
Right. Yeah. By the way, I couldn't even imagine going onto a field with a Range Rover or like any foreign car.
I could.
There's a joke about that. Maybe we'll save that for
They're pretty nice. I've done it before.
He was brand new to ag, and he went on, hey, here's the rental car company. He got some Ford car, I can't remember what it was. And every farm he went to, the farm manager was looking at him, trying to figure out what was going on. It wasn't a Ford, it wasn't a Chevy, it was some Ford. I think it was a Jag. And I'm like, you get a Jag and going on a farm field? Really?
Yeah, but that's my favorite is going and taking your truck to get service, taking the rental car and taking it on a loop you drive. You know what I mean?
Okay, let me take it. There was a lot there, Doug, but let me try to take
answer this. What I'm really concerned is the difference between people who have used you, who have caught on, and why, versus over here. And I'm not saying it hasn't caught on here, but you're starting to build it. And how does it move faster for growers to get to know exactly what is the success that's happened over there, and why people like Brad and Chase needs you and you need them. Right? So, because you guys seem to have a synergy together,
huge,
right?
Huge. Well,
So
let's talk about partnerships first. So USDA, we patented the technology after 5 years of work with them. Colorado State, USDA, we had a lot of researchers, PhD, dissertations, master's theses written on this thing. We did field research, office programming, whatnot. This thing's been vetted 8 ways from Tuesday. In addition to the most recent partnerships, now we're happy to announce that we partnered with Central Irrigation and Water and Land Solutions. Formally, we're tied at the hip now, and we're working together to push. We're using that as a distribution strategy.
Okay.
Because these guys have the relationships, they understand the need. And, we're a small company. We have field people, we have technicians, we have salespeople, but these guys have the relationships with the growers. And so it helps speed up the adoption process instead of us trying to educate every single damn grower in the Central Valley, San Joaquin. We can now rely on great trusted partners to help that process. So we're so excited about that. It's such a wonderful relationship. It's amazing. Our growers fall in 2 buckets generally. Okay, so our clients, I should say. Bucket 1, they don't have a lot of data. They may be gathering some use data, or they're using some technology.
They record they have Billy record the flow meter once a year.
Maybe.
And he lost it.
Yeah. Or it's written down, handwritten,
trust me, I'm Billy.
so Doug's in bucket 1.
Yeah, I'm bucket 1.
I'm with you. All right. So that's bucket 1. They don't have trending data, but they got something. And then we've got the second people in the bucket that have no data, no idea. They're rolling with their operation. It's all been up here intuitively. And that was fine for sometimes 5, 6, 7 generations. They could operate the farm. They know their field. They know the dirt. But they haven't had to worry about that. But now with SGMA, with Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, with potential drought cycles, they're worried. They're concerned. They're worried they're going to lose their operation. Their legacy operation. They're afraid they're not going to be able to survive for 2 or 3 seasons from now. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do when their kids come back from college. It's scary stuff. So most of them fall into 1 or 2 buckets. And regardless if you're down in Imperial or you're dealing with Colorado surface water, you're dealing with surface and groundwater up here. Surface, groundwater, different irrigations. We've been on almost every crop you can imagine. There's some consistencies that we've seen. And I like to call it the carrot or the stick. There's a carrot or a stick in almost every region we're in. So think about that guy dangling the carrot, the other one with that big old stick ready to hit you on the back of the head.
I want to be the guy with the stick.
You always want to be the one with the stick, unless you're trying to bite the carrot, because that's money. Yeah. And the analogy is money on the carrot. Now, do you want the carrot or the stick, Doug?
Carrot. I want the carrot, but I still want to hold the stick.
Yeah. I want to eat the carrot while swinging the stick.
He wants the cake. All right, I like that. That makes sense. All right. So here's the carrot. Imperial Irrigation District. Established district. They're in trusts of Colorado River allotments, right? The largest allocation of California water. I think it's, 3.6, 3.5 million acre feet. Delivered down to the Imperial Valley for use. Well, Imperial has developed a conservation program where they will pay growers to save, or if they save water. Now, this is consumed water, not delivered, right? Okay, we all know delivered water to the field, you deliver a certain amount, and then a lesser amount of that delivered water is actually consumed by crop and evaporation. The consumed component is what they pay for. So you can't just put a water tap or the equivalent of it on a pipe and say, okay, I was pulling 1 unit of water, now I'm going to pull a half a unit of water, I saved half the water. That ain't going to fly. That ship ain't going to sail. It's going to be, I've delivered 1 unit of water, I haven't injured my crop through crop stress, and I've reduced a certain amount of consumed water, because as Chase alluded to just earlier, in the Western water world, it's consumed water that's the value of the water, right? Because that serves someone else's water right. So if you apply a unit of water, some of that trickles down your system and goes back into the system, that water is used to charge someone else's water right. So that's why it matters. Yeah. Okay? So in Imperial, you get paid to save. So there's real dollars out there. There's a carrot. Using consumption.
What kind of dollars are we talking?
We're talking, well, they're in process of reducing it. Historically, it's been almost $300 an acre foot. Wow. They're talking about
acre foot or acre?
It's $300 per acre foot per acre.
So
Yeah, it's big money. It can be big money.
That's what we profit.
Where is that? Where is that?
That's why accounting matters.
Yeah, right. Bingo. No, that's it, Brad. I mean, it should. So here's a good example. So I'm not comparing the district with the IRS because that can have a negative connotation, but that really is the best analogy I can come up with. So if you go in front of the district to show your water use reports and they give you an amount that they think you're consuming, if you don't have your own data, guess whose data you're using?
Right.
Theirs.
Yeah.
So it's like the IRS coming to you and
We
saying,
all get charged that.
yeah, we're going to audit you. We're going to audit you. And guess what? We think you gave us the wrong information on your taxes. Are you going to walk into the IRS and say, oh, you're right. I'm not going to talk to my own CPA, my own accountant. I'm going to use your data, IRS, because I trust you because you're the IRS. No, you'd never do what, right? You're going to go get your own, hopefully a damn good CPA to look at that and go in on your behalf.
Yeah, see, because CPAs worry about pennies. I'm a macro type of guy. I like round numbers.
Right.
Right. But when you start paying your water bills, right, especially from some districts, I won't say them specifically that I buy water from. They just give you consumed 15 acre feet.
Right.
But yet I'm paying 100 or 200. Shouldn't it be I consumed 14.97 acre feet?
They don't know.
Or 15.03?
They don't know.
Yeah.
I know. So
Some of them do know more than others, but most of the time it's like your valve is open this long.
Yep.
Estimated of 2 CFS, and that's the coverage.
well, there's a lot of leaky valves. I promise you that.
He's hit on a really good point. The measurement units are antiquated, and again, remember these guys, they're districts. They're serving a huge service area, a lot of data to process. They're not going to be able to. You're asking them to get to a tenth of which matters, but that's a big ask for irrigation districts that are holding that water in trust, charging their growers for their.
All right, stop.
So, anyway,
Stop.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Wow.
If because I want to give an example. All right, I want you to tell me if this is a reality.
Yeah.
Can swim come into a district today and say within a year I can get you to that 10th? You get what I mean? I mean, because
I'm with you. The year scared me a little bit.
With all the concept, money wasn't an object.
I always money. But I mean, is that a reality, or is it a 2-year project, or is it? I mean, because I'm asking Kevin, do you see yourself helping these districts out?
Yes, I think it gets there. I think
If they were already metered up everywhere,
right.
That's the hardest part. The infrastructure is the expensive part.
We hit it both.
I wasn't trying to be rude, Kevin. What I'm asking is it reality for these districts? Because we can, a lot of times, we as people can paint a blue sky.
Right.
You know, it sounds great to monitor every drop of water, right? This sounds great. I know you can do it on my 300-acre ranch probably within a day and have me up and running. I've seen your platform. It's amazing. You guys have done. In the last 3 to 4 years, I've had a lot of people bring me a lot of water stuff. Hey, let me track your water flow meters, censoring. I hate the office, but I do. All I care about is, like I said, my balance sheet. Am I creating a higher net worth?
Right.
And is in my income statement, do I have a higher profit at the end of the year?
That's it.
And what your guys' platform has shown me, not saying you guys are the only game in town, but from what I've seen, is something that actually shows the most valuable thing on my ranch down to a decimal point.
You're right.
Yeah.
So my question is, can you do this on the district level?
The answer is yes. The system's scalable all the way to. We developed it as a basin-wide. You know, it scales. It's on the cloud. We've got plenty of bandwidth. It's more of scaling the infrastructure. Districts are in varying degrees of infrastructure build-out, right?
but size too. We know some really small districts that you could hook up. We know lots of districts that are smaller than some farms.
Why don't you give me their number, Brad? I give a call.
I think it's also a value thing. So you don't weigh a load of hay to the 100th of a gram, but you weigh gold to whatever, the thousandth of a gram, right? So as the value increases, the demand for measuring the water on a more accurate level, like to the 10th of an acre foot or even the 100th of an acre foot, that's going to have to be a reality. The problem is that luckily we live in California. There is, in most years, an abundance of water where people are still buying 325,000 gallons, which is an acre foot, for $10, $20, $30.
Right.
And I go into the convenience store and I buy 16 ounces of bottled water for $3. I bought a Fuji water today. It cost me $3.99 at the gas station.
Beer's cheaper.
I know. Exactly. And and you can buy some dishes you can buy an acre foot for $25, and I can't even buy 2 cases of bottled water for that. So I think obviously as farmers we don't want the cost of water to go up, but until it's either the perception of the water is more valuable or the actual purchase price of the water is more valuable, there's not going to be a demand to measure it so detailed.
You hit it on the dot. So take Imperial, the cost of the water is relatively low because it's a long-standing right? So I think it's $20-some, maybe it's $20 an acre foot to deliver it. It's not expensive water, but they get paid. The delta between what they pay for the water and what they get when they save it is huge.
Right.
Use a truck, huge. Almost $300, huge.
That's a horrible.
Here's my truck.
Huge.
Here's my truck.
Huge. That's a horrible huge.
Yeah, but at the same time, guys, we got to remember, and we're dealing with farmers that are farming 40 acres up to 4,000 acres. And Brad and I are in their office or out on the ranch with them every day. Everything we're talking about is an incremental cost. And Doug talks about balance sheets and all this kind of stuff. It's expensive. And a lot of these guys are growing crops that have a flat revenue year to year. I mean, it's not all high-end stuff. And so every time you're talking to them about another project, whether it's infrastructure or another program to monitor and data, get your data collected, it's tough because at the end of the day, they've got to earn a living too, and they can't just incrementally keep adding things to it. So there's a fine line there, and I think Brad and I do a really good job of trying to define where that fine line is and how you can maybe incrementally get there.
Right.
So you can do things at a district level where they can spread those costs, and maybe whether their delivered water is $40 an acre foot or $140 an acre foot, but they can spread those costs versus now going out and try to implement a program on the farm. I think if you're not in one of these districts that's aggressive, that is getting up to speed on the metering and stuff, you've really got to look at it about trying to put infrastructure in place on your farm that better gauges exactly what you're doing with the water, what type of water you have, and putting something in perspective to track it, because no one else is going to do it for you. Right. And you got to figure out how to get there, even if you're struggling on the backside about flat revenues based on what you're farming.
Yeah, you're right on flat revenues, because it's like every fertilizer rep tells me, put this on, you're going to get 10 more tons.
Right.
I should be producing
150 tons.
150 tons tomatoes. That ain't happening.
Exactly,
okay.
Right. Exactly.
So I get what you're saying, Chase, because my dad always tells me that. Well, sounds like you're going to just hit the gold mine. You add that in, So it's like, you're right. We can't keep adding everything. But one thing best fertilizer, they say, is your boots on the ground, but I believe is, like Chris Morton, my PCA agronomist, says, it's your water. So the way you apply it, the way you handle it, how much you use is so important. And I know my farming company isn't doing a great job at it. Yeah. No offense to Josh Bonds. I love you, buddy. But, we are not monitoring it the correct way.
Chase just hit on a good point. So when you're looking at it from a district standpoint, they're going to look at it differently than a grower. And we hit on it 2 or 3 times during the podcast here. They're trying to control expenses. They don't have a huge budget in most cases to install a bunch of technology. So it's the granularity of the data. Does a district need every turnout monitored in telemetry? Maybe, maybe not. Can they get a represented case study, or representative, not case study, but representative swath of land and get to that number with less cost potentially, and then the grower can take it to the granularity of the field level if they'd like. So you look at all of those different options. One thing just to finish up, guys. So I talked about the carrot. The stick side of the equation is what's happening with SIGMA. Okay, that's penalties, that's assessments, that's reductions, right? So there's no major cash incentive on the front end to save. What you have is the loss of that resource or some reduction, right, guys?
An allocation or pumping fee,
right?
Those sorts of
A big question I get asked all the time is, what's the timeline on all this? And is the timeline different for different areas? And how hard are they going to come down on us farmers?
Well, if we're talking strictly about SIGMA, the groundwater sustainability plans, which is mandated by the Act, is required to be submitted to the Department of Water Resources the end of January 2020. And each sub-basin, well, it's kind of complicated. Each sub-basin is different, but generally speaking, each sub-basin is going to have a plan that is going to dictate if there's going to be allocations. They call it demand management. There's the primary focus in most of the GSPs that I'm involved in is on the project side and not on the stick side. So they're planning to try to import as much surface water as they can through going for water rights off of floodwater and building groundwater recharge ponds. I know a couple GSPs that are coming out with pumping fees right out of the gate based on crop consumption, crop use with satellite imagery. There's lots of discussion about allocations right now. I see most GSPs delaying allocating in this first January 2020, but within a year of that, we'll see them happening really soon.
Are they going to be more prompt or stricter with certain areas over others because of the overdraft position of that basin?
Yeah, SIGMA defines undesirable results. It's like a buzzword now. There's 6 of them. The primary ones of concern in the Central Valley. Well, I guess all of them are concerns, but at least in this area, the primary concerns are groundwater depletion, so groundwater levels lowering, and land subsidence. So those are the drivers for most of the farmers. And
so in layman's terms, we're losing groundwater. They're worried about losing groundwater and then the ground settling.
Yes, and land subsidence significantly impacts a lot of the state's infrastructure. So it's very, very heavily scrutinized by regulatory agencies.
So are they going to? Do you feel the regulators are going to be?
Yes. To answer the question, the white areas are the areas that pump most and are going to be scrutinized the most because those are the areas where these undesirable results would happen. And a big part of SIGMA is monitoring. So there's going to be constant monitoring of groundwater levels and land subsidence. So that should be the primary focus for the farmers in all the farmers is to start conserving now to do little projects, even though there isn't really a carrot and a stick yet. Monitoring is going to dictate the demand management, the allocations. So even if they're not mandating that you reduce yet, the monitoring is going to show if you don't. And then you're going to get a stick. And the worst stick is the locals don't manage it properly and the state comes in, and that is written into SIGMA.
Brad, are you saying if you use monitoring and tracking, like for example, and I'm not saying you got to use swim, you use any tool, but we've got an argument.
But you should use swim. Wink, wink.
Appreciate that drop, Doug. Try to be a little more eloquent, but it's all blown up now. Delivery and consumption, we mesh that together. So we use satellite, we use weather, so that it can be an agronomic tool. Are you saying, if I'm hearing you right, if you get in front of that and using it as an agronomic tool for planning, you set a baseline, you could almost potentially limit or reduce the stick or maybe get around?
Oh, you could have no demand management if the monitoring, because they're using, like 2014, 2015 as base. Right. So if we can just decrease our consumption incrementally, we could avoid all kinds of significant demand management.
Wow!
And then if you because then you create your own baseline, right? From what I understand, if you have your own data, you're tracking what you're pumping, what you're using, how much and the Sigma, as it pertains to Sigma, you track how much groundwater you're using, and then you have proof. It's kind of like appropriative rights, right? If you don't have a statement of diversion, you kind of lose that right. It's the same. It kind of sounds the same. Along the same lines, you have to have your data. You have to know where you're at to begin with. Otherwise, they're going to come in and set your benchmark or your index where they feel is fair for the whole area.
And so kind of, we're beating around the bush, and this is what most people want to know about. And generally speaking, this is a generalization, but generally speaking, if you're in the white area, so if you don't have district water, you're going to get, the sustainable yield is calculated at less than an acre foot per acre typically. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about sustainable yield, and by 2040, we're talking about, if we get to an allocation, it would be an acre foot per acre for white area farming.
For groundwater pumping.
For groundwater pumping only. Right. Now, I know of areas that are less than a half a foot, and there's areas that are over an acre and a half. So it's a generalization. Right. But if you're in a white area, think about it in those areas and in that line.
I got a question for Mr. Hurley. I call him the golden boy of water,
the gray hair guy.
Yeah. Well, and I know he can't stay much longer because he's got to go save the world right now in water. But Chase, you've been with the districts, and say everybody in the district is using their allocation in various districts around here and not pumping, because pumping a lot of times is the easy way. What's your thoughts on these out of district, which I know you're in some of these projects right now, getting water from the districts, these wide areas getting water? How are the districts taking that as you're presenting some of those plans to them? Long term, I know you've gotten some projects done. Long term, what do you see about that? Is that a long term solution for some of these wide area people? And I know number one, it's going to cost structure. Number two, it's going to be accounting. And number three, it's going to be expensive water. Is that beneficial to the district, to neighboring districts, to help these out of district people? Or is it not feasible long term?
No, I think long term, if you're in the white area, for one, you got to get organized. And I think a lot of people are doing that, whether they're organizing themselves in an official district or sort of a looser fit. But you're going to have to be able to work with your neighbors. You're going to have to be able to try to set up transfer programs with your neighbors. You're going to have to put infrastructure in. It's all about taking a surface water supply that, based on potentially where you're at, is limited in a number of years. There are a lot of historical pre-1914 water right districts that have a good source of water, and they are looking for neighbors to work with within their sphere of influence. So, the only way I can keep going is to stay positive. And to stay positive, you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, guys, let's figure out how we can all work together to stay in business. And I think most districts are willing to move their water and their asset to neighboring landowners that aren't within their boundary, rather than moving it 400 or 500 miles away vis-a-vis a transfer. But at the same time, that district has a board of directors that has goals and policies and thought process in line. But I do see a lot of inertia that way. And I guess I'll just wrap it up this way, that you've got to stay positive, and whether it's the imperial growers that have sort of taken to working with Kevin and his group and doing a lot of great things. I just spent a whole day with Eureka, a farmer, a dairyman out of Ferndale, him and his wife, a young couple that they don't know if they're going to be in business 3 years from now. A small farmer, and their water issues, it's a flat milk market right now, and now they've got the irrigated lands program just knocking the snot out of them. Brad and I have the potential, we've been approached to help manage and help focus on some of these programs that are tough, the irrigated lands program, and they're not easy jobs because those are things that the farmers can't see a lot of value in. But at the end of the day, we might be willing to jump in and help our growers because we've got to keep them in business. So today's been a good day. I just got out of the meetings in a local water district that Brad and I work with. We helped get it started. They just bought 8,000 acre feet of water today from neighboring districts. It was a complete white area 3 years ago, and we just bought 8,000 feet of water from 2 surrounding districts.
Wow.
So this year we're going to deliver 12,000 acre feet of water to an area that up until 2 years ago didn't have one drop of surface water and couldn't get surface water. So that's what keeps me going. And that district is almonds and pistachios, but it's also got a dairy farmer. And is $150 to $300 water expensive for a dairy farmer? You bet it is. But when working with the neighbors, they can figure out how to make it work. So I got to stay positive and just continue to realize that nobody can grow food the way California can, and we got to keep everybody in business.
That's what it's all about, Chase. That was awesome.
If I can add one thing, we, in the last several months now, we've had clients now that have used our technology for 2-3 years now in the Central Valley. Now, we've moved from up to Imperial, and we're on Central Coastal now. And we've been getting calls and now approvals finally. And as you guys know, it's hard to get growers to let you use their name publicly until they really get to know you. 10, 20, 25% savings. They started using, it happened to be SWIM, but it could be any tracking system. And now they're showing, they showed a baseline 2 to 3 years ago, and now we had calls and testimonials we can use where they say, I now know I'm going to be in farming for at least the foreseeable future. That brought tears to our eyes, our team members, because we said, as you said, take it piece by piece, try to help one person or another. That's what keeps us going. Now we're hearing those case studies. Anyone that loves ag gets that. And anyone that wants to see it sustainable moving forward, it was great to hear that.
No, that's the ultimate goal, right? What you said, Chase, and you, Kevin, is like real world solutions to these problems that we're encountering. And, hearing Chase about that water transfer, 12,000 acre feet, you're talking, 4,000 acres of full water allocation to farm pretty much any type of crop you can think of. So that's some real awesome progress, and these guys have only been doing this for a couple of years. So thank you guys for coming today. This has been a learning experience for me. I get to do business with you guys pretty much every day, but we rarely get to sit in a room and have an open conversation like this. And the key is to learn something new every day. I definitely learned a few new things today by listening to you guys. So thank you guys. And as always, we'd like to give a toast at the end of our episodes. So today we're toasting with a glass of single malt scotch to SWIM and Waterland Solutions for being a part of our podcast and coming in and sharing all this insight with us today. So,
and some water too.
And some water.
We're chasing with water.
Hey, and we want to ask you guys if you guys would like to make a toast to anybody too out there, whether it's clients or whether it's foreseeable things you guys see. When I say a toast, I mean, just
a shout out.
A shout out, yeah. Whether it could be to your mom.
Well, I'm going to do a shout out to my grandpa Samuelson and dad. They instilled love of agriculture in me, and I thought it was great on the first podcast when Grandpa Diego mentioned when he came up here to start his dairy that my grandpa went out with him and walked that ground and first broke it.
Yeah, that's deep. That's cool. Long-standing relationship.
Yeah, I'd like to say a cheer to JSH Enterprises. That's my younger brother, Jack. He's a young kid, a lot younger than I am, but he's one kid that wants to stay in farming, and you don't hear a lot about those younger generation want to stick in it. So keep plowing away. And then finally to the California Ag Leadership Program. I've been spending the last 3 or 4 days with you, and you provide a lot of value, not only to California, but to everybody that sort of works in agriculture, whether it's Washington, D.C. or Sacramento. So shout out to the program.
That's great. I'll put a shout out to the Brown family, because even though you guys billed me from Colorado, I'm a Santa Maria 5th generation native. And all the Brown family on the ag side, that's what got my interest in ag years and years ago, and then moved to Colorado and continued it out there, and then came back out here. So I made the rounds, so appreciate that.
Well, and I want to thank all you guys. I want to give a special shout out. Somebody in this room who you guys all know is very special to me, Richie Mayo. And there's been a health issue that he had come up, and he is here right now. This guy, young guy like you talked about, Jack, your brother who helps me. Richie Mayo loves ag, breathes ag, helps my family, my dad out, and many of my family members. He's here today. God is good. And, as always, my partner Keith, I can toast him every day because we get to do these fun things as well as do business together. So I want to, again, just say thank you to all you guys.
Thank you.
California's good. Let's keep it going.
Cheers. Salute.
Yeah. Got a rodent problem that's costing you money? Caddyshack Rodent Service aims to reduce the population of gophers and squirrels in agriculture, commercial as well as residential. They eliminate rodent populations without using synthetic poisons. Contact Caddyshack Rodent Service at 559-363-3315 or check them out on their website at caddyshackrodentservice.com.